Trade rumors are escalating again as a writer suggests a blockbuster New York Met trade, and you see the man on your screen. That is Baltimore Orioles all-star center fielder Cedric Mullins. This came from Jackson Roberts of the Sporting News in an article titled Mets named blockbuster trade fit for Orioles $8.7 million all-star. That all-star, of course, being Cedric Mullins. I alluded to this yesterday at the end of my video that the Mets could be going out and making a trade on the offensive side, and this would definitely beef up the lineup and also the outfield. So we'll get into the details of the article and the details of who Cedric Mullins is. But first, I want to welcome you back to Mets Digest. I'm your host today, Mike Duda, and as always, I like to start off with some statistics. And today's stat is that 73.6% of you that watch these videos are not subscribed. So please do me a favor, hit that free subscribe button. That way we can bring content to you about the Amazins. It really helps out the channel and it helps out myself as well. So thank you in advance, and let's go ahead and get right into this article. So according to Roberts, on Tuesday, RJ Anderson of CBS Sports named the potential target as Cedric Mullins, and there were plenty of other outlets that mentioned this as well. In fact, this was over the past 3 weeks. The Sporting News being one of them, Sports Illustrated, Motorcycle Sports, PFSN, BVM Sports, and also ESPN. So plenty of outlets saying that the Mets could be going out and getting Mullins. So let's go ahead and see who he actually is. He is a 30-year-old lifelong Baltimore Oriole that made his rookie debut in 2018. A double lefty standing at 5'8", 175 pounds. That's the basics on him. So let's go ahead and hear what the professionals have to say and what the experts are saying. RJ Anderson himself has said, quote, Mullins has mastered the art of pulling the ball in the air, allowing him to outslug his meager exit velocities, and he's successfully stolen bases at an 80% clip for his career. He's also walking more than normal, having reduced his swing rate to a full season low. So some pretty solid offensive takes from RJ Anderson about Cedric Mullins. And overall, that's what he's known for. He's a guy that runs pretty well on the base paths, is at best a decent center fielder, but hits pretty solid. And here comes the defensive part in which a lot of teams are taking high interest in. Anderson said, quote, what it comes down to then is how teams view his defense. A club who believes he's at least average in center could view him as a comfortably above average talent nearing his date with free agency. He is an upcoming free agent at the end of 2025, and Anderson goes on to say potential fits: Philadelphia Phillies, New York Mets, and San Diego Padres. All of those teams being championship contending teams, teams that want a ring and want to go to the World Series. So the last quote that we have is from Roberts himself. He says, quote, Mullins is making $8.7 million in his final year of arbitration, and by the trade deadline, the Mets will be on the hook for less than $4 million if they choose to go after him. So that's definitely a deal that the Mets would like, particularly President of Baseball Operations David Stearns, who doesn't like to overpay for players. He would only be paying $4 million for a guy who's a pretty solid hitter in Cedric Mullins. We'll get into the stats in just a little bit. To go on with Robert's quote, he says, that makes the deal a bargain from a financial perspective, so it's really all about the prospect package. So obviously the big thing that was mentioned there is that there is no prospect package listed. There's no details about who the Mets would be sending in return. Now, I believe this is going to be similar to if the Mets go out and get Kyle Finnegan. It's a topic I talked about a lot last month, so go out and check those videos if you haven't already. I talked about the rumors that the Mets could be getting star relief pitcher Kyle Finnegan. I think you're in the same boat with Cedric Mullins. In fact, you might be in a better spot because the Orioles are not a division rival. I think Mullins is going to be someone that doesn't cost too much for a multitude of reasons. The first being, he's not the biggest name. In fact, he's 11th on the Orioles in WAR. He's not a guy like Ryan O'Hearn or Adley Rutschman or Gunnar Henderson or someone like that on the Orioles. He's not the biggest name on that team. Also, the O's are shockingly 19-35, good for a .352 winning clip. They are dead last in the American League East, second worst team in the American League, and they are the third worst team in all of baseball. In fact, the Chicago White Sox, and the Colorado Rockies are the only teams to not eclipse 20 wins so far this season, and that is some pretty bad company that you really don't want to be sitting in if you're Baltimore. And this is all despite the PECOTA projections at 89 wins and a second place finish in the division. So I don't believe that the package is going to be too great for Cedric Mullins, but let's go ahead and dive into who the Mets would actually be getting. And we'll turn to my favorite friend in Baseball Reference. This year, he is hitting to a 226 average, 320 OBP, 446 slugging, good for a 767 OPS, and a 122 OPS plus, which is second best in his career. He's also amassed 10 homers, 31 RBIs, is 7 of 9 on stolen base attempts, which we saw. He steals to about an 80% clip, as we heard in the quote. He also has 23 walks to 50 strikeouts, which is pretty good. That means on average, he strikes out 2 times for every walk that he draws, which is a really solid ratio, and we'll see that when we go into the advanced metrics a little bit more. He is a career 251 hitter, 320 OBP, so the exact same OBP as his career this year, a 426 slugging, good for a 741 OPS, and a 109 OPS plus. So he is having a statistically better year than his career numbers. And we go back to the 122 OPS plus. That, I said, is the second highest of his career, only behind that excellent season that you see in 2021 when he was an all-star, finished 9th in MVP voting, and was also a Silver Slugger. Now, the offensive numbers, they're pretty good. I like these offensive numbers. I think these are a lot better than a Tyrone Taylor or a Jose Siri, which I'll get into a little bit more later. But the big question is the defense, because this year, you see the WAR. The WAR is not really that good at 0.3, but his offensive WAR is 1.3, which is much better than his current WAR. It's his defense that's dragging him down. His defensive WAR right now is negative 0.8, which is really, really bad. In fact, this is the second year in a row that he has a negative defensive WAR, and the third time in his career, his rookie year being the other time that he had a negative defensive WAR at negative 0.5. So let's go ahead and check out the advanced statistics when it comes to Mullins. As you can see, it's not all red like we saw with Juan Soto and as we've seen with some other guys. The best thing about him is his chase percentage. He doesn't chase a lot, doesn't whiff a good amount as well, and draws a boatload of walks. So they're not too promising, the advanced metrics, but the actual stats and that OPS and that OPS plus, I think it speaks for itself, and we know that the offense is going to be pretty solid in that production from Cedric Mullins. Now, interestingly, when you look at these advanced metrics, they actually say he's a pretty good fielder in terms of his range out there, and also, as we've seen before, on the base paths, he is also a threat. So I think that that defense and that base running being really sound is another reason the Mets should go out and get him. And the third reason being when you compare him to who they currently are throwing in center field. Now, Jose Siri should be returning relatively soon because that injury has been a couple of weeks now, in which the doctor said a 6 to 8 week timetable for Jose Siri. But when you compare him to Tyrone Taylor, the numbers just don't stack up. Now, I know that Taylor right now is leading in 2 pretty big statistics, that being batting average and WAR. But again, when you look at the WAR, Taylor has a 1.0 WAR that is most certainly increased by good defensive play, that being a 1.0. And if you compare that to Cedric Mullins' offensive WAR alone, Mullins hasn't beat at 1.3 because Mullins is a below average fielder, even though the advanced metrics that we saw here say he could be pretty solid in terms of his range. He just doesn't have a good arm with arm strength. Now, when you look at the rest of the statistics, again, besides batting average, Mullins is clearing Taylor in every single one of them, and the OPS plus is something that I really want to look at here. Offensively, Tyrone Taylor is a below average MLB player. Cedric Mullins is a pretty solid above average player in terms of offense and in terms of OPS plus. And all those numbers speak for themselves. You got 10 home runs compared to 1, 31 RBIs compared to 8, more stolen bases as well, better slugging, better OPS, better OBP. All of this is better for Cedric Mullins. Now, this isn't to say I don't want Tyrone Taylor on the Mets. I most certainly do. I really like Tyrone Taylor. I just don't think Taylor should be your everyday center fielder. And I know people are going to say, oh, fine, well, you switch him off with Jose Siri, right? Both guys are pretty similar players. They're both really good defensive guys, and when they get on base, they're quick, but they don't really get on base a lot because they are not good offensively. As you see, Cedric Mullins is a much better offensive player, and I think you could sacrifice a little bit of defense for a guy who, by the advanced metrics, should be a solid enough defender, maybe a little bit below average, if not an average defender. I think it would be an upgrade to go out and get Cedric Mullins out there in center field. Keeps Tyrone Taylor as your fourth outfielder, which I think is awesome. And then you have a debate. Do you want Starling Marte or Jose Siri to be that fifth outfielder? Both of them have struggled so far this year, and that's up to Met management. But I think if these rumors are true, the Mets would be going out there and getting a really solid piece in Cedric Mullins. You see it from the stats. It's a much bigger offensive upgrade, which the Mets could really use right now. I didn't think we were going to be saying this going into the season. I thought the Mets had this amazing, potent lineup, but so far, it hasn't showed to be that. Right now, the pitching has been carrying them. So I think going out there and getting a nice bat to go play center field every day in Cedric Mullins is certainly worth it. We'll see what the prospect package is if this gets any bigger. And of course, I'll give you any updates if we get them. But for now, if the Mets go out and get Cedric Mullins, I would be a big fan. That's a big upgrade in a bat that is much needed here in Flushing. But that's all the time I have for you today. As always, thank you so much for watching. And let's go Mets.